So let us welcome our speaker for today. Our speaker for today is one of my favorite humans in the whole wide world, no? And actually, feeling ko favorite din niya ako kasi she owes me her life. Haha, hindi. But kidding aside, no, our speaker for today is a registered psychotherapist and art therapist, no? So, here, ito siya. There you go. May clue na kayo kung sino siya. She's registered psychotherapist, art therapist. She started working with clients in 2016 with a range from children to adults in individual and group settings. And she graduated BS Family Life and Child Development from UP Diliman. She has a diploma in art therapy, a master's in theology with a focus on spiritual care and psychotherapy. And she lives in Toronto. We have an import for tonight, and she is a wife and a mother. Sana ba yung ano? Yan, with her happy family, and it's none other than my one and only sister Meryl Calaguas Taylor, I should say. Let's bring her into the stream. Hi, Meryl. Where are you?
Hi.
Hi,
Hi.
there you go. Hello, hello.
Hello.
My and only sister. Hi, Am.
Hi,
Welcome to the
Ate.
show, guys.
I do owe you my life, so that's okay. I say that every birthday greeting of yours. Thank you for asking for a sister. Thank
Yahoo! So, Meryl, we're so excited that you're here. You have quite an impressive resume. When I was asking her for her credentials, grabe ka naman, ang dami mo namang ano. Actually, pinaiksi na namin yung dun sa poster because she has 3 extensions to her name, no? Masyadong mahaba. So sabi namin, ito na lang muna. But she has several, what do you call that? Extensions, no? Yung parang, whatever you call it.
yeah.
YCs after her name. So accomplished, so proud of you. But tonight
Thank
you're going
you.
to shed light on something that maybe not a lot of people get to talk about, no? And the topic for tonight is, where is my? Here you go. Overcoming trauma, part one. O, di
Part
ba? May
one.
yes,
I
it's a
see that.
part one, part two, because it's just, when we were doing the pre-interview, right, parang it was just so much to talk about, right? So
Mhm.
let's jump right into it. We're so excited.
Okay.
First of all, let's talk about, maybe let's define trauma first. No, you gave me a definition, and maybe you'd like to explain. Oh, before that, you wanted to say a disclaimer, pala, when we were talking earlier.
Yes, I
Yeah.
I do want to say a disclaimer. I thank you everyone. First of all, I'm super honored to be here. I'm super excited to join and be here live because the last 2 weeks I watched the episodes. I'm in Canada. I'm in Toronto, so it is 6:50 in the morning, almost 7. So I'm super excited to be here. So gusto ko lang share yung disclaimer because I'll be talking about some difficult topics. If you need to take a break, you can step out. Just be mindful of what's going on, and maybe viewer censorship, maybe too sensitive for very young children or even children. Yes, so just wanted to say that disclaimer because we will be talking about some harder issues that involve, we talk about sex, violence, but not too much on that. That's the disclaimer.
Yeah, so I guess that's good, no? Para we don't want additional trauma. Tama ba
Yes.
'yon? And so
Yes.
speaking of trauma, you gave me this definition, and I'll flash it on the screen right now. And would you like to explain? You know?
Sure. So I like this definition because I will read parts of it, but for for everybody, I want to read. So trauma is the lasting emotional response that often results from living through a distressing event. So distressing event gaya ng katulad na sinabi mo ate, it could be an accident, it could
Mm,
be abuse, it could be relational, it could
yeah.
be neglect.
Okay.
All these things can classify as trauma. And also, meron pang what we call vicarious trauma. It's like you don't have to see it or experience it, but if you hear about it, natutrauma ka
Okay.
na. So that's very real. So
Mm,
I want to go to the last sentence because I think it's very interesting. So long after the traumatic event occurs, people with trauma can often feel shame, helplessness, powerlessness, and intense fear. So that's the wow. So trauma is very difficult. Sabi nga, another definition, it's an extreme event, or a traumatic event is an extreme event that causes us to respond in extreme ways. So medyo if you hear of people na parang you hear of flight and freeze and fight response, that's associated with trauma. So that's yeah, those are the usual immediate responses to trauma.
wow, extreme responses. It's an
Yeah.
extreme event, and it merits ba, or it results in, I think that's the right term,
Yeah.
results in extreme responses as well. And so Meryl is only 30, in her 30s, no? Meryl, tama? 30. Pareho pala tayo
30.
30, no? She
Yes,
turned 30,
30.
and yet it's interesting that she's talking about this because she actually has a very powerful experience, and she mentioned that she is currently residing in Toronto, Canada, and she started there to study art therapy. Pero yung first work mo actually talaga is for a non-profit, no? Tama ba? A Christian non-profit organization.
Yes.
And we don't have to say the name if hindi pwede, but this certain organization actually helps sex traffic survivors. Tama ba
Survivors.
yung term na yun?
Yes. Tama.
To parang
Survivors.
reintegrate them. So, Meryl, how did you get into that? Like, why did you pick that for a first job? In a foreign land. What what
Yeah.
what what was going on in your mind?
I don't know. It was a God thing for sure. I'm sure may naka-experience na kayo na parang this is so out of left field. Parang I would never think to do this. First off, I never knew about human trafficking, sex trafficking. And normally when you think of sex trafficking, human trafficking, you think of Taken. If you watch the movie Liam Neeson, parang okay, may kidnap tapos we'll take them somewhere else and we'll sell them to slavery or sex work or something, but it has so many facets. So when I heard about this organization, I met the founders at our church, and yeah, I felt drawn to it, but I knew it was a very humbling experience because it trauma siya eh. And if you're familiar with therapy or just with counselors, parang trauma is it's a big one. I feel maybe I'm biased, but it's like not everybody will touch trauma because
Mhm.
trauma is so complex. It's so difficult. Sometimes you're seeing clients for so long. Sometimes clients will show up just once and expect okay na ako or something. So I was very humbled, but I wanted to share art because at that time I was practicing specifically art therapy, and I wanted to be able to work with these survivors and give them parang another tool, another
Mhm.
thing to use in their healing journey. And we'll talk about more of that in therapy and art therapy in part 2. But that's what drew me in. I was passionate about art therapy, and I wanted to share this with the survivors. And women, mostly women, are the ones that are affected by this. Yeah.
Naalala ko before, no, while you were still working with them, I was asking you, what was it like to, so let's just clarify, no, yung mga, the ones that you were able to help are those who were already removed from the system. Tama ba ako? Or
Uh,
ba?
some of them in this non-for-profit, they were already out. We call it the game. So they were out of the game already. They were able to
Okay.
exit or leave their trafficker or something like that.
Okay.
But I've also had in my other job, my agency job, I was working with those who were actively in it still, so who are still
Oo.
in the game. Either alam nila or conscious sila, or parang they're not conscious in a sense of, no, that's just my boyfriend or something. That's just
Mhm.
this is my choice or something like that. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. So sabi you mentioned something kanina 'no, you said that trauma is very complex. Parang marami siyang layers, tama ba yun? Would you like to
Mhm.
elaborate on that?
Yeah, especially so sometimes meron kaming sinasabi na small T trauma. Kunwari, it's like a one-off event, like a car accident. That's a one-off event. Pero situations like this, with survivors, usually what we see or studies show is that there's complex trauma. There's complex PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder that stems from childhood all the way up to where they are now, young adults or teenagers, young adults. So in childhood, kasi we have this theory, or what we work with, which we call attachment styles. So I knew of this in FLC, in family life and child development already, but when I saw it in the lens of trauma, I was like, wow. So basically, this theory says that the more secure you are as a child, or with your caregiver, whether that's a parent or a grandparent, kung sino man yung nakasama mo when you were a child, the more secure you are, the better your chances are to not develop post-traumatic stress disorder. So for my clients that I saw, they had a lot of insecure attachment already as a child, and then it maybe they were bullied in school, so that's another trauma, and then they maybe didn't have the best relationships, romantic or otherwise, so it builds, nagbe-build yung trauma nila. So a lot of the times when I'm processing trauma already with these survivors, my clients, we often have to talk about ano nangyari nung bata sila. Of course, we work up to that place. But you'll be surprised. It's not about necessarily, not the trafficking itself is not the most traumatic thing. It's what's happened to them when they were a child or when they were a teenager. So talaga, you're right, Ate Cookie, Pastor Cookie. And there's layers, and also wanted to add yung how people respond to their trauma. So, for example, abuse survivors or incest survivors, they always say sometimes that mas nakaka-trauma yung reaction ng pamilya doon sa actual event. So, to give context, incest survivor was abused by their father. A lot of their times, they're more traumatized by the fact they weren't protected by their mother. So there's many layers to it. Kala mo lang, oh, it's just an event. It's just so
Mhm.
simple. There's an abuser, there's a victim, or when they come out of it, they're a survivor. But it's how the community responds to them. Do we shame them? Do we understand them? Do we support them? So as people who maybe have connections to anybody who has experienced any form of trauma or abuse, we can think about as Christians, paano ba tayo nag-respond? How are we, you know, feeling their pain? Are we compassionately having meaningful conversations with them? Parang wag naman sana po nasasabihin natin, oh, it's your fault because you got into that relationship or something. So
Mhm.
that can be very traumatizing. So yun po, yun yung layers and facets to the
Ang
trauma.
dami mong sinabi na sobrang ang dami nating puwedeng i-explore. So first of
Yes.
all, you talked about layers. You talked
Yes,
about,
layers.
kumbaga puwede pala yung trauma hindi lang siya na isang event. I just wanna summarize 'no, hindi lang yung parang ito lang 'no, parang meron siyang mga kumbaga nagbi-build, tama ba? Nagpapatong-patong siya, right? Is that the right term?
Mm-hmm.
Parang nagpapatong-patong siya, nagsimula siya nung pagkabata or whatever, no? And then you said something about support systems. I think the
Yeah.
last thing you said, no, yung parang for example, yung example na binigay mo is yung isang babae na rape or ano siya, survivor siya ng, tama ba yung term na yun? Survivor siya ng incest, no? Tapos mas traumatic sa kanya yung hindi siya pinakinggan ng nanay niya or na hindi siya protect. Parang gano'n pala. So,
Mm-mm.
parang double yung layer ng trauma niya. Hindi lang yung meron na ngang ganitong nangyari sa akin, tapos meron pang external factors. Tama ba? Tama ba
Mm,
yun?
mhm. Yeah, tama yun, Pastor Cookie. Tapos meron pa akong nabasa in one of the trauma books na when a trauma happens to an individual, it actually happens to their community. They feel it, right? Kasi dun, for example, in that scenario na it was in the family that happened, the victim, we victim siya, pero we want to say survivor kasi mas empowering. So the survivor is in part of the family. The family members feel that, right? They will feel kawawa naman yung anak ko, or nakakaasar naman yung anak ko, why did they get into this or something. So everybody around that will feel it. So yeah, correct at Ate Cookie, that may
Yeah.
layers and it's very complex.
And it's also a community thing. Doon ko lang na
It's a community thing.
when somebody is traumatized, the community
Will
is
feel yeah.
affected. Kasi we were saying, I don't know kung nasabi natin to sa mga episodes, no, but we said nga, when you're sick, when somebody in the family is sick, the whole family is sick. So
Yes.
in the same way pala, ganon din, may parallel din pala siya in trauma cases or traumatic events where
Yes.
um the community, I love that, no? Parang we really, sabi nga din sa kanta, no, walang sino man ang nabubuhay para sa sarili lamang, no? Tayo ay may
Tama.
pananagutan sa isa't isa. One of
Tama.
those songs na kinakanta sa church, no, sa simbahan. Pero kasi pala totoo, we are entwined.
Yes.
And when somebody experiences trauma, lahat affected. So, paano yun, Meryl? Siguro meron ding defense mechanism yung iba na they don't want to feel that trauma. Pwede ba yun? Like, I can just
Of
imagine, like, if
course.
it's too much for you and, she's part of the community, I don't wanna feel what she's feeling. So, parang mas lalo pala siyang nato-traumatize kasi we push her away or him. Pwede rin naman, no? Pwedeng
Yeah.
guy din yung na-traumatize. So, the community is very, very important.
Yes.
And you said something kanina, if there are support systems that are there, mas makaka-overcome ng trauma.
Yes.
So Meryl, can we overcome trauma? I wanna ask that, like, point blank. Like, nakaka-overcome, ang tao ba ay kayang maka-overcome ng trauma? Kahit gaano ka, like, you were talking to survivors, sex traffic survivors, no? So, I mean, ano pa bang mas trauma doon? Pero, you saw it. Did you see people overcome that?
Yes. Yes, that's a good question. Yes, I want to give you hope. Anybody here who has experienced trauma, whatever kind of trauma that is, there is a way to overcome trauma. God has so much grace. And kahit yung mga clients ko, they don't necessarily know God or know that I'm a Christian. I know that God is speaking to them and helping them. And parang I feel so blessed and honored that God would use me to help them, to help minister with them and walk with them in their journey. So there is a way to overcome trauma. I just want to say that it takes time, and can take a lot of work. I'm speaking as a clinician. I know as a Christian na there, and we talk about this in Restorize, na there are sometimes na miracle right away, right? But it is also a miracle even when it takes months, years. Because when you see the effects of trauma and the effects of trauma in our brain, and they do brain imaging for this, it's like, wow, how did that person overcome this? And it's really by God's power. It's through help of the community, whether that's your church, your friends, your family, professional help like therapists, doctors. Sometimes, of course, meron din yung mga physical aspects of trauma. So these all help in the fight, or in the journey of overcoming trauma. Just takes time, or it can take time, pero it happens. I believe it. I've seen it. I've seen people, just be like, I'm okay with that now. The things that brought them, bring them nerves, you see very physical, like they're very shaken about stuff. After a while, after processing, they can talk about it and not shake anymore. Parang nawala yung power ng trauma over them, or nawala yung power ng abuser over them. Parang I'm okay, that person has no power over me, or something like that. But yes. Yeah.
I'm speechless. You're just saying so many awesome things here. You mentioned definitely there's hope. Ang ganda nung sinabi mo. You even talked about how yung brain scans,
Yes.
how when somebody overcomes trauma and you see just the damage. I guess that's what you're saying, no? The damage to one's brain. Like, is that
Yes.
physical? Like
Yes.
there's a physical damage to your brain. Kumbaga, yung utak mo merong na-deform somehow, no? I mean, you know what I mean, na deform ng konti. But when you get over it, you will see, no, na kahit na whether it was instant or it came in months or even years, sabi
Mm-hmm.
mo nga, it's still a miracle.
It's still
Pag
a
nakita mo
miracle.
yung state nung brain mo na ganito ka nasira, ganun pala ang trauma, no? It really
Mm-hmm.
destroys. And you talked about power. Sabi mo na when you are able to talk about it pala, ano yun? It did happen, no? It did happen to you, but it has no power over you. Parang it doesn't define you anymore. You
Yeah.
are no longer a victim. You are no longer this girl or this boy na ganito yung ginawa sa'yo ng isang, person, but um, you are someone who has risen again, no? From a very, very low point to now you can move forward. Kahit hindi nabura, no? Parang hindi nabura, pero
Mm.
wala na siyang power.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we can use our platforms, no? To empower others also and say, hey, you can do it too. I mean, you can also overcome the trauma that you experienced the same way I did.
Yes.
Meryl, we have a question here, no? If we can entertain some questions. How can someone become aware that she has trauma that is unresolved pala?
Oh, so wow, that's a really good question. So as a therapist, I see this, right? I see it's kind of different kasi alam ko na they're coming for help, right? So they kind of want to see things, pero there are some parts na they don't want to touch. They're like, okay, I'm okay to talk about my relationship, but my parents, I don't want to talk about that. Like, that's fine. I had a good childhood, okay na yan. And when you press and prod, paminsan, you can see some buttons being pushed. So, ang sa akin, I will say again, as a Christian, I think it's just let's pray and be very gentle. I don't know if this is a friend or a family member, but we can pray for them and ask God to reveal it to them. As a
Mm,
therapist, I tread very carefully because, again, I do not want to traumatize my clients. I have to have a really, really good working therapeutic relationship with them before I can say, hey, why don't we look at this? Maybe
okay,
there's some
pinapoint mo
unresolved
in other
here.
words.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very, very, very gently. And I say, and that's me as a professional. As a person, like if this was my friend, I think I would be, again, very, very careful. I would do it only with the leading of the Lord, because again, it's God who works in our hearts and shows us
Mm.
these things also. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think the word there is gentle, no? Yung
Yeah.
parang na 'wag masyadong i-push because
Yeah.
it is traumatic and maybe at that point meron pang power yung trauma over that person, right? Na hindi ka pa parang may ano siya, no? Parang naisip ko lang, it's kind of like parang oppression in that sense, no? Na parang it's still there, it's still parang it has power over you, but that's why we need to recover from that, and it takes prayer, therapy, and community support, like you said.
Community support.
There's another question here, Meryl. I hope you don't mind, no? Sabi dito, does the person need medical intervention to deal with trauma, and how to make them accept that they need one? So pwede ba yon? Can you just overcome trauma without, like, is it because mas grabe yung trauma, parang dapat yon professional talaga, or what would you say? How would you address this question?
I think here's my classic example. Na two people can be in a car accident. One walks away. Whether I'm not talking about physical
Mm.
what's this?
Yeah,
Mga
injuries.
injuries,
Injuries.
injuries. But I'm talking about the brain here and the trauma. One walks away completely okay, and the other is completely not. And it was
Mhm.
the same car accident. So I think each person is different. Na maybe some people need more professional help. Syempre, I'm
Okay.
biased, so I'll say, of course, professional help is great kasi wala namang mawawala sa'yo in a sense of, oh, if you didn't need it, di mag one session ka and you decide na, okay, I think I'm okay or something. But, and I think there are times when people just talk about it and talk about it with their community, their family, and
Mhm.
that's enough of a support. If you have a really supportive, caring,
Mhm.
gentle community around you, that can be so healing. So I think yung key there is going to trusted. If you're not gonna get professional help, and I will also say this, therapists are not perfect. So baka may
Yeah.
encountering kayo na medical helper or
Mhm.
counselor
Yeah.
coach, but rubs you off the wrong way, diba? So I should say that too. So
Yeah.
it might take a while to find the right fit for you. So it's the same with our friends and family. They might not say the exact thing because the right thing because they don't know what the right thing is to say. And
Right.
so I think with that question, it just depends on the person, and then how to make them accept they need one. We can't, because medical intervention and therapy, it's a choice. People have to sign off to on
Yeah.
it. They have to consent to getting the help. So as much as we can say, oh, I know this therapist, or I can offer these
Mhm.
resource, yun lang you can offer all these like helplines, numbers, people
Mhm.
they can talk to, pero at the end of the day, it's their choice to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. And speaking of helplines and hotlines, now I'd like to just share this. If you want to explore that, sabi nga ni Meryl, you want to talk to someone or anyone, just please yeah, look at these numbers. You can take a screenshot of them and yeah, it might help you or your friend, no? Pwede din, no? And ang ganda nung sinabi mo, Meryl, that it's really the community also. But I want to ask you this, although you touched on it already. This will be, I'm wrapping up already, no, Meryl. How does your faith play a part? What kind of part does it play in overcoming trauma?
I as as a person of faith, everything that I do is for the Lord. And I think when I'm faced with very difficult scenarios, sometimes difficult clients, but difficult cases, I have really, that's when I'm most humbled, because I'm like, God, I really don't know what to do. And clearly, my client doesn't know what to do, also. So I think faith just leads me to the direction of God has all the answers and the keys. And I need God to download that into my brain and my body so that I can be an effective therapist. I also know, parang kasi with mental wellness, with trauma, with depression, with anxiety, and all these things, and that we'll speak more about next week. Parang the aim is like, oh, to be well. I just want to be mentally well. I just want to overcome this trauma. Pero sa akin, it's like overcoming trauma is a step, but it's really my relationship with God. Because sometimes I think this trauma, like we went to the definition, it really makes us ashamed and does not want us sometimes to face God. Sometimes we question, is there a good God despite all this trauma? So I think faith plays a role in that. I know there's something more. I know God exists. I know God is there, even if this happened to me, even if this keeps happening to me, or even if I have had the most traumatic childhood experience. And I know God loves me, and I know that He can use that for the greater glory, and to speak to people and to encourage people. Now there is life after trauma. Because sometimes we get so stuck. Na I'm here and I'm always gonna be here. I'm always gonna be stuck in my trauma. But no, God has infinitely more for us. Yeah.
Ang ganda nung sinabi mo, Meryl. There is life after trauma. There you go, kakalabas lang, no? There is life after trauma. And I like what you said that um, with the trauma that we experience, we think that that's it, but there is so much more that God has. And I also appreciate what how you're talking about overcoming trauma in the with the lens of, sabi mo nga kasi you came face to face with evil, right? Like I remember kung ano, ini-interview ko siya dati pa, no, wala pang restaurant, nakikipagkwentuhan lang ako sa kanya when she would visit, and sabi ko, how do you, like, kinikwento niya pa lang sa akin kung ano yung mga na-experience ng mga naging clients niya, parang that's evil, 'di ba? Parang you're staring evil at the head on, and then parang buti you are able to see the goodness of God pa din. How are you able? Maybe you can share kasi yung iba ganun ang iniisip nila eh. Yun nga, like you touched on it na, sabi mo na how can a good God allow something like this, no? But sa'yo, you came face to face with it, meaning you saw it in the experiences of your clients, your former clients, but you still saw the goodness of God. How can you explain? And I think people will really get something powerful from that.
When you ask that question, ang una ko talagang naisip are my clients. Na parang, wow, I am so privileged and honored to have worked with those ladies. They have showed me so much strength, so much resilience, and talagang, and therapy is not all serious, right? So, I'm even as you're asking that, Ate Cookie, I'm thinking of the times we're laughing in the client in the office and just, chatting, and because we're talking about the now and also the future. So I think despite, yes, there's evil in the world, and yes, there are really bad people, but when I see the creation of God, human beings, parang, wow, God, you made such beautiful creatures. They're so resilient, they're so creative, they're so talented, they have so much to offer to this world. And a lot of the times these survivors, parang after they go through this, they want to give back to the community. They want to be therapists, or they want to be working with other vulnerable people that they want to help. So parang yun yung parang sobrang, that is from God's heart, that wanting to help people, the having compassion, that in spite of all the evil in this world, you still believe that, oh, God is good. So that's how I think I got through it. It's like seeing the goodness in God's creation, and again, it's just the most humbling experience that I've had so far in my career working with these clients. Yeah.
Sabi mo that the creation of God, and you were talking about these people,
Yeah.
how they are able, parang the way our brains
Fearfully
are,
made. Yeah.
we are created to overcome. Kasi yun yung nasa DNA. I've heard it before. It's been said before. Like the fact that you're alive, you are a winner. There's so many things, the fact that you were born, and
Amen.
kasi ang daming pwedeng maling mangyari, but we're all survivors in that sense. And it just goes
Yes.
to show the testament of how God created us and how He has a purpose for us, na hindi tayo, like, hindi sila nasira. We are not destroyed. Even
Amen.
if evil tries to destroy us. 'Di ba? Like, yun nga, no dignity, no money, no
Yeah.
shelter, no anything. And then they're thinking of how to give back. Parang that's really so powerful that God, that God planted that in our hearts, right?
Yeah.
So,
Amen.
Meryl, ang dami natin pang pwedeng pag-usapan, kaya two parts talaga tayo, no? Hindi pwedeng lang. But I want to ask you, this is called Rest to Rise. This is the Rest to Rise live stream. And I want to know, what is rest for you in the context of trauma, and how can you rise again?
Yes. So I love this question. It's a good question. I'm glad we're ending with this. So in the context of trauma, how can you rest? I think it's resting in the support of the community, of the church, of the people around you, knowing that they love you and they want to see they want to see you come out of the trauma. And the rising is also with the community. So parang what I see, that my vision that I see is people reaching, kasi when you're feeling down, when you're traumatized, and you physically ask for help to be brought up, and that's resting. You asking for help from community or accepting the help that is offered, that's you resting. And the rising is going with them so they can take you out of it or help you take a step just a little bit out of your trauma experience. Yeah.
Wow. And it's the best is when, the community is, what we can have community with God, no? Yung parang yung
Yeah.
having that relationship, right? Because community is about relationships. And that when you
Yes.
talk about community, I believe you're also talking about that kind of having a relationship with God and having a
Yes.
relationship with the people around you and the
Yes.
people God put in
Relationship.
your life. 'Di ba? The people that God put in your life to sabi mo nga to pull you up also, so to help you rise, no? Because we were not meant to be an island. God created people around us to help us, to
Yeah.
pull us. And si God din yun, no? God also
To
provides the
community.
people. So if you're watching this right now and you're encouraged, I hope that we can be a community for you as well to help you in your journey, whatever journey it is. And we can continue to journey in knowing God more and how he is unfolding the beautiful story he still has for you. No, the rest is still unwritten. Oh my gosh, that is just Meryl. It's
Yeah.
been so awesome. There are like it's so powerful. People are blessed, and we have a few minutes left. I don't know if we have any more uh comments. But next week, no, I wanted to show this. This is on the left is your first artwork, tama ba? Result from your art therapy. Ikaw yung
Yes.
gumawa, right?
Ako
Ikaw, that's
gumawa ng left. I did the left. I didn't do the right. Yeah. No.
okay. The left one is your first, and the right is what you facilitated. Tama ba
Yes.
ako? Okay, so
Yes.
that's why we're going to talk about that more next week. We're
Yeah.
going to explore, no, yung parang overcoming, how do we process and all that. So next week may part 2 pa in overcoming trauma, more tools for us.